Accepting on behalf of George Soros is Alice Soros. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to George Soros. Born into a Jewish family in Hungary, George Soros escaped Nazi occupation to build a life of freedom for himself and countless others around the world. Educated in England, he settled in America as he became an investor and philanthropist, supporting key pillars of open societies: rights and justice, equity and equality, freedom now and in the future. His inspiring generosity reminds us all of our capacity and our obligation to stand up to the abuse of power and to be guardians of democracy and all people yearning to be free.
President Biden's getting a ton of backlash for his list of awardees for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a list that includes George Soros, Liz Cheney, and even Hillary Clinton. People that have one thing in common: they don't like Donald Trump. Although the president-elect, he continues to win. Now, to prove that, MSNBC just admitted that Trump was right about the borders. And of course, we have to talk about his case in New York and the message that he sent to Judge Juan Merchan. But let's go ahead and start things off with MSDNC. And guys, I want to thank y'all so much for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Let's jump in.
The border was not Biden's finest moment, frankly. You can see what happened here. And Trump is not wrong when he talks about how border crossings were quite low. They were running about 74,000 a month when he left office. And they, in fact, did shoot up. Some of it was some things Biden said and some ways that they put a moratorium, for example, on deportations. But, in fact, we did get up here almost to 300,000 a month. But what maybe people don't entirely know is that border crossings have come back down almost to where they were under Trump. They're running at about 100,000 at the moment.
Now, I want you to notice the messaging here, okay, guys? Instead of saying that Trump is right, they're saying that he's not wrong about the border. Now, we know that Trump's term led to lower border crossings, but as soon as President Biden took over, those numbers somehow managed to shoot up. But again, the message is that now it's coming down, without mentioning that Biden's term has allowed millions of illegal immigrants to come into our country unvetted. And if you follow the presidential campaign of Kamala Harris, she insists that the border crisis is Trump's making. It's Trump's fault, arguing that Trump shot down a bipartisan border deal that would have sent billions of dollars to Ukraine. But just like one of his new MAGA hats, Trump's words have turned out to be right, making another loss for Kamala Harris and their open borders. From right to wrong, let's talk about the criticism that President Biden is facing right now after awarding multiple people with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Montana Senator Tim Sheehy called out President Biden, saying this: Joe Biden's decision to give Hillary Clinton and George Soros the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a national disgrace. George Soros spent millions electing soft-on-crime politicians that let criminals wreak havoc in our major cities. Hillary Clinton abandoned our Navy SEALs in Libya. Former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton also had words for Biden's picks. He said that the significant financial support of Mr. Soros and his open society for far-left, woke, criminal justice reform, district attorney, and mayoral candidates created havoc in the criminal justice system and significantly rises in the crime and disorder. So Biden, on his end, thanked George Soros for all that he's done to, quote, help this country. And while he's getting a lot of hate, he at least didn't do to Soros what he did to the Vietnam veteran that he awarded the Medal of Honor in late 2023. You remember the poor guy he suddenly walked out on after awarding him a medal? An act that sent all the wrong signals to veterans across country. Now, speaking of messages, President Donald J. Trump just sent out a new message to New York Judge Juan Merchan. In a post on Truth Social, Trump maintains his innocence, stating that he never falsified business records and that the charge was fake and it was made up by a corrupt judge, which we can only assume to be Juan Merchan. He continues to say that the judge was only doing the work of the, quote, Biden-Harris Injustice Department, which should be seen as an attack on their political opponent, which is Trump. Now, he usually refers to himself as me in these posts. This is because he usually dictates his social media posts to someone else who would post it for him. And while his message is clear, this isn't what far-left media focuses on. They instead focus on making fun of the president-elect.
So So Judge Maran, in the order upholding the sentencing yesterday, said this. He said to vacate the verdict on the grounds that the charges are insufficiently serious given the position defendant once held and is about to assume again, this is E6, y'all, will constitute a disproportionate result and cause immeasurable damage to the citizenry's confidence in the rule of law. So he did feel like he had to do it. The president-elect is up this morning, and he has thoughts on his social media site. He is not happy about this.
He's not happy.
There's never been a president who was so evilly and illegally treated as I. Corrupt Democrat judges and prosecutors have gone against the political opponent of a president, me, at levels.
Just in case it wasn't clear.
Just so we're clear, me, I'm the president. Wow.
You know, I mean, I'm glad Judge Maran did this, but I'm also like disappointed because it seems performative in a sense, because you're saying, oh, you're still convicted, you must come to sentencing, but I'm not going to sentence you.
So they completely missed the fact that Trump argues that he wasn't hiding anything and that everything was out in the open for everyone to see. Trump also sent a very direct message that says that Juan Merchan, the judge, is corrupt. Going back to the facts here, it's been proven that Judge Juan Merchan donated to Joe Biden's campaign. There's also the matter of his own daughter being paid millions of dollars by top Democrats, even working under Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. But even with all of that, he refused to recuse himself from the case. And this is why Trump is saying that this guy should be disbarred. And this is why people and companies are fleeing New York, because of the corruption within New York and their justice system. Trump says that the Biden-Harris DOJ is either directly or indirectly involved with all of these cases against him, and that he even won the case against Jack Smith. And I think Scott Jennings made the most sense here when he talked about it on CNN. Watch.
Should Trump do anything about it?
Well, I mean, I guess he could show up and continue to show what this case was all about in the first place. And that is, it was for a political talking point. This case should have never been brought. It was brought by a partisan prosecutor. If Donald Trump weren't Donald Trump and he weren't running for president, this case would never have been charged with felonies this way. This complete and total sham. It's a kangaroo court. Of course he's not going to be punished for it, because the only reason they ever did it was so they could try to call him a convicted felon during the election, which they, of course, did. And then the American people soundly rejected this naked partisan politics. If you're watching New York City news right now, you got people being burned on the subway, folks running around with all kinds of violence in their past and not in jail. And the criminal justice system is being used on Donald Trump.
And he's right, guys. They needed every advantage that they could get during last year's presidential election. Again, guys, it's the Trump effect. Meanwhile, Democrats have Vice President Kamala Harris that can't even get the Pledge of Allegiance right. Check this out.
Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to...
Now, like I've been saying, guys, January 20th cannot come soon enough. More on those Democratic mess ups later. But first, let's talk about the Trump sentencing Judge Juan Merchan is sticking to, okay? Because it does look like the New York judge has chosen his side, as he's just denied President-elect Trump's bid to toss his conviction in his New York criminal hush money case. He did write in his decision that he is not likely to impose any sentence of incarceration, but rather a sentence of unconditional discharge, which means that there will be no punishment imposed. So there is that. Plus, he also gave himself a little bit of wiggle room, as he noted that he's still reviewing other motions filed by Trump to dismiss the case. He also rejected the suggestion from DA Alvin Bragg that he preserve the verdict, but end proceedings, as it would deny Trump's right to a path to appeal. But still, guys, over at the Trump camp, they're calling this a direct violation of the Supreme Court's immunity decision and other long-standing jurisprudence over the deeply convicted acting Justice Juan Merchan in the Manhattan DA witch hunt. Keyword being acting justice. In other words, he ain't even supposed to be here judging over Donald Trump's case. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But this is coming from Trump spokesman and incoming White House Communications Director Stephen Chang. Now, according to Stephen Chang, this lawless case should never have been brought, and the Constitution demands that it be immediately dismissed, and that President Trump must be allowed to continue the presidential transition process and to execute the vital duties of the presidency, unobstructed by the remains of this or any other remnants of the witch hunts. Bottom line for Stephen Chang, there should be no sentencing, and President Trump will continue fighting against these hoaxes until they're all dead. You see, President-elect Trump and his team have been trying to overturn his guilty verdict in New York versus Trump. They're citing the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling that presidents have immunity for official acts. But according to Juan Marchand, the evidence presented in the trial was related entirely to unofficial conduct and thus received no immunity protections. Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree, coming from the years-long investigation related to alleged hush money payments run by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Former Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance initiated the investigation, and DA Alvin Bragg prosecuted Trump. After an unprecedented 6-week trial in New York City, a jury found the president guilty on all counts. But Trump attorneys said that this case would never have been brought up if it were not for President Trump's political views, the transformative national movement established under his leadership, and of course, the political threat that Donald Trump poses to the entrenched, corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C. and beyond. I mean, the American people, they saw it all unfold, including the guilty verdict, and yet 77 million people still overwhelmingly voted for the president-elect. I think that says something about this case, right? Drop a quick yes in the comments down below. Hit the like button if you guys are catching my drift here. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tap that notification bell too. I really appreciate the support, you guys. Now, another interesting bit of news is how President-elect Trump helped to avert a crisis in the House speakership election. So instead of this messy, drawn-out fight to lead the House of Representatives, kind of like what we saw after Kevin McCarthy was ousted, he got a peaceful transition of power, unlike what Democrats were hoping for. Now, apparently, Trump spoke by phone with both Representatives Ralph Norman and Keith Self after they had initially voted for people other than Mike Johnson for Speaker. Self and Norman were seen disappearing into a side room with Mike Johnson and others after the roll call vote was complete. But before the vote was formally closed, they emerged just minutes later and announced that they would both vote for Mike Johnson, cementing the Louisiana Republicans' victory. Done and done. That must have been one hell of a phone call from Trump, huh? Now, I can only imagine what they must have discussed during that phone call. But next order of business for Congress. But another key person that they noted here was Representative Nancy Mace. According to this, the South Carolina Congresswoman connected Trump with Self and Norman by phone after they voted against Johnson. She was also seen sharing a hug with Mike Johnson on the House floor after they and others were in the side room with the holdouts. Now, some people even commented on their intense talks with Norman off the House floor earlier. Yeah, I know it may not sound all that interesting right now with the House speakership decision, but it's good to remember these dynamics because we're probably going to see this play out in the future decisions in the House. And those we should definitely be paying attention to, especially with such a slim majority for Republicans. You know what I mean? But at least we're seeing a better working administration now, right? I mean, like, just look at Vice President Kamala Harris. She's a heartbeat away from the most powerful position in the country, even the world. And yet she couldn't even get the Pledge of Allegiance right. Before swearing in the senators at the 119th Congress, Kamala Harris led the pledge and accidentally mixed up its famous opening words, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America." Now, I showed you guys a clip earlier over the microphone. She could be heard saying, "I pledge allegiance to the United States," trailing off as she appeared to catch herself. And then she picked up with the others, "the United States of America." Not fast enough, apparently, because the moment went viral on social media. Everybody saw what happened. Prominent pro-Trump account Johnny MAGA posted on X, "Holy smokes, Kamala Harris just screwed up the Pledge of Allegiance on the Senate floor. What an embarrassment to this country." He also pointed out how tens of millions of Democrats voted for this woman to be president just weeks ago. So just imagine just how close we were to having Kamala Harris as president. Makes me shiver just thinking about it. And on the topic of the Democratic mess-ups, we also have Washington State Democrats accidentally emailing their radical tax plan to their entire Senate. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Part of the email from Washington Senate Deputy Floor Leader Noel Frame was a document titled 2025 Revenue Options and a PowerPoint presentation describing how to talk to constituents and defense of the plan were included in the messages. Man, and I thought that my email mix-ups were bad, right? But this takes the cake. So the document lists proposed figures for an 11% tax on ammunition and firearms, reclassifying storage unit rentals as retail transactions, and a lift on the property tax levy lid for certain Washingtonians. They even had a chart of do's and don'ts talking about the best ways to talk taxes. And yeah, it said, do say, pay what they owe, but don't say tax the rich or pay their fair share because taxes aren't a punishment. Oh, they're not? I suppose that's debatable. What do y'all think? Are taxes a punishment or a necessary evil? Y'all let me know. It also suggested using the terms funding, providing, and ensuring when describing the apparent benefits of tax hikes rather than the term investing in X. Another proposal is a capital assets ownership tax. It's kind of similar to property tax, but instead would extend the real estate type tax to holding in stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments. Now, according to the slide, we can ensure that extremely wealthy Washingtonians are taxed on their assets, just like middle-class families are already taxed on theirs. Then there was a very concerning point about identifying the villain, that is, blocking progress and laying out how they can take action to solve the issue. New York judge and Democrat Juan Merchan just declared war on the incoming Trump administration as he just rejected the president-elect's request to vacate the verdict in the hush money case, and instead he set sentencing for January 10th at 9:30 a.m. So Juan Merchan said that he will not sentence the president-elect to prison, but if Trump has anything to say about it, he's probably not going to be sentenced at all. He does wield a certain power over people. Case in point, Republicans now have House Speaker Mike Johnson, thanks to President-elect Donald Trump, helping him with, let's just say, a couple of phone calls. Meanwhile, Democrats are facing setback after setback. At this point, it's just pretty much embarrassing, isn't it? So first, Vice President Kamala Harris got the words wrong during the Pledge of Allegiance. Then, Washington state Democrats accidentally emailed their sweeping revenue plans and internal talking points on tax hikes to the entirety of the upper chambers members. Like, what are they proposing? Property tax hikes and a new double-digit tax on firearms. What a mess, right? Well, trust us to uncover it all in today's video, you guys. All you got to do is sit tight. Appreciate you guys hitting the like button and subscribing. So real quick, first, we're going to start off with this first video here. Breaking news of Judge Juan Merchan denying Trump's bid to dismiss conviction in his New York hush money case. So here's the breakdown from constitutional lawyer Jonathan Turley. Check this out.
All right, breaking right now, the judge rejecting President-elect Trump's bid to throw out his criminal conviction in New York because of his election win and ordering to show up for a sentencing a week from today, either in person or virtually. That's all according to Reuters. Prosecutors had suggested putting the case on hold until Trump leaves office, but now he's facing sentencing before Inauguration Day. Constitutional attorney and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley is going to be standing by on the phone for us in just a moment, but we have Clay Travis, I believe, with us still here. Clay, your reaction, this is just an incredible hour to go from, a win for the president-elect with the speakership and now sentencing before inauguration?
Yeah, this is crazy. I will say the fact, as you just hit it, I've got the order in front of me right now, to allow him to appear virtually suggests to me that there is not going to be a substantial punishment coming from Judge Merchan. Now, I could be wrong, but if you're virtually sentencing someone, you're not taking them into custody or trying to do something in a significant way there. So that's my biggest takeaway reading the order.
All right, Clay Travis, thank you very much. We want to bring in constitutional attorney and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley now by phone. Jonathan, break this down for us. What does this mean? What are we likely to see play out?
Well, that's a very good question. This is a judge that has kept people really guessing for a very long time. I described this once as the longest performance of Hamlet in history. We really could not figure out what the Merchan was going to do. He's now decided to sentence a president shortly before he is sworn in. Now, one of the things that I've said in the past is that many of the complications that we've been talking about and potential conflicts with the constitutional standards only arise if you impose a sentence that would hold him physically or demand his appearance, things like home confinement or actual sentence to jail. This would be a case where you would not even normally see a sentence for incarceration. So I've always doubted that that would be coming out of this case. So the court may be looking at this and saying, I'm not going to trigger any constitutional problems because I'm going to hand down a sentence that's not going to bind him in any way or interfere with his carrying out his duties. The one thing that I have to say, if you put a positive spin on this, is the worst option is the one suggested by Bragg, that you should just suspend the sentence and keep the president as pending sentencing for 4 years. That was a perfectly horrific idea that's being pushed by many. And I think that many people on the
We've got less than 30 seconds left in the show, but I want to ask you, what do you expect the Trump team to do in response to this? Can they appeal it? What happens next?
I don't think they're going to have a lot of luck appealing this. I think the appellate court's going to want to see what he rules. Because if he comes down with a sentence that doesn't bind the president, then a lot of the constitutional problems fade away.
So you expect that we will see the sentencing go through. We will see a sentence.
Yeah, they may well appeal this, but the odds are always in favor of trial judges in these holding these hearings. The appellate courts like to see sentences finalized that they can review the case and the sentence.
So this has got people saying that this New York judge is the perfect example of corruption in our justice system, because the judge knows that the second this case concludes, he'll be disbarred and probably prosecuted along with the case that's being immediately appealed. We'll see, guys. We will see, and I'll definitely keep you posted. But one thing is for sure, the judge is probably going to regret this decision before long. I mean, he's making a very formidable enemy in the person of President-elect Trump. Is that a good idea to do that? Just look at what he was able to do in the House speakership battle. Republicans were able to avoid a messy process thanks to the president-elect's intervention, and he's not even inaugurated yet. So here, watch this.
About, as we wait to hear these speeches, what this moment means and kind of what it means for the agenda, and also for the Democrats, who are kind of licking their chops, I think, about this slim majority and maybe things that they can do or not do.
Well, Republicans did narrowly avert the specter of Speaker Jeffries again, but this is actually a triumph for Mike Johnson. I mean, he had a majority in which he could only lose one vote and still win, and that's what he did. So that was pretty impressive. As I was saying before, I think it's a Trump effect, and I think there was more Trump influence being exercised behind the scenes. So I think that was a very big part on this. It's a vindication of the president's wishes in this, and it's also a reminder that Republicans really should have won more seats in the last election. This is not going to get any easier going forward doing some legislation, and it will call on the president's ability to call some of those Democrats who've been more open to him than they were in the past to join him on some matters of legislation and perhaps pass a few things on a bipartisan basis. That's going to be more necessary, and we've seen it today when you can only lose one vote, Republican vote, and still pass a partisan bill.
But the problem is that Americans aren't as blind as they think we are. And it also helps that more and more voters are out there looking for the truth, which led to Trump's historic victory, something that wasn't surprising to people who held on to facts. Now, what's surprising is that 2025 is already hitting us with haymakers. Now, I talked about this in a previous live stream where many Americans were left unprepared for harsh weather, with a winter storm set to hit most of the country with cold, snow, and ice. Make sure you guys check that one out. But as always, appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you guys next time.